welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is the podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximize your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show. Hey guys, welcome to episode 66 of the Motorsport Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Belinda Risley, and today I'm joined by Mark Boudreau. And I apologize, Mark, if I pronounced your surname incorrect. I did forget to ask you during our interview, and I did the intro after today, so my apologies if it's wrong. Mark is a former lawyer who publishes Motorsport Prospects. It's a global resource guide for race drivers with consulting service to be launched this summer. Think of Motorsport Prospect as a guidance counselor for race car drivers. I've been interviewed on the Motorsport Prospect page, guys. So if you haven't checked it out, stay tuned to see how you can hear about all those fantastic stories and about some industry professionals that Mark has interviewed. Don't forget, we've got an upcoming sponsorship workshop on April the 4th. If you want to sign up, the link will be in today's show notes. We're also doing for the first time, a junior driver development. We were meant to be doing a face-to-face driving camp, but because of what's happening in the world, we're going to bring it online, and that's going to be held on April 7th and 8th. So again, the links will be in today's show notes for you guys, and with a link to also of our current resource free folder that we've put together for you guys to work through during this period. Let's get started with today's show. Good morning, Mark, and welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is a little bit of a different interview for me. Normally we've got someone that is a driver, a mechanic, and just sponsorship. But tell us what you do.
Well, what I run is a resource site for drivers. There are directories out there for suppliers, for motorsport suppliers. So you can find out who sells brake pads and helmets and driving suits, but there's no real central resource for a driver looking for example, a conditioning coach, a physical conditioning coach, a mental conditioning coach, a sponsorship advisor, online driver resources, things like that. There's not really anything out there. They're all scattered around, and there's some really incredible resources. So I thought what I would do is I would kind of put them together and make them in a way that is easily accessible, and then drivers have access to the information to help them with their careers.
Fantastic. And what's it called?
It is called Motorsport Prospects at motorsportprospects.com.
Fantastic. And how did you come up with that? Are you a driver yourself, or are you a fan, a volunteer? How did it all, a parent of a driver? How did it all come about?
No, actually, I'm going to age myself, but I became a fan of motorsport in about 1981. So I'm Canadian. I'm based in Montreal. And when Gilles Villeneuve burst onto the scene, that's the guy that, attracted me, like so many other Canadians, people around the world. And I was wondering, and I never really was into racing. So slowly as that progressed, I became interested in young drivers and how they get to that point, how they get to, at the time, Formula One. And being pre-internet days and trying to track Canadians, especially in North Americans racing in Europe, it was extremely difficult. So, I started building up kind of contacts and information strictly as a fan. My background is the law. And so I was never interested in actually driving. I was more interested in the business of the sport, and I was more interested in trying to find a way to promote and help develop talent that should be going and moving on. And so that's pretty much my motivation that's remained since I've started.
Fantastic. So you did say that you're a fan and that you're a lawyer, and so you just got a love for motorsports. Are you still riding to Formula Ones now, or have you broadened your horizon and done now like all of the kind of different categories that's available?
Pretty much everything. And the interesting part is, as I started this project, I did start to, I always followed open wheel. So that was always my primary interest. But then I got involved in sports cars and interested in sports cars. Stock cars, took a while, but then I started kind of getting a bit open with stock cars. I've always loved motorcycle racing,
Yeah.
which is something I do want to get it. I want to start moving into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much cover the gamut. There is primarily road racing now, but I do want to go into things like rally racing, raids, and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much anything on wheels that's pushed by a motor needs a driver, and a driver needs resources. So I figure that's my approach.
Yeah, fantastic. And does your day job involve motorsports as well?
It involves it not at all. So it's kind of my creative itch that gets to be scratched. It is a nice, it's nice to kind of walk away from racing sometimes and just clear your head, but it's just it's really a passionate project. It was never intended to be any kind of a business, even though it's slowly evolved into that.
Yeah.
It's strictly something that I just love to be involved with.
Fantastic. Well, we thank you for setting up that directory of providers and suppliers. What are some of you mentioned that you've got personal trainers, sponsorship agents, and so forth. How does the process work?
Pretty much the way it works right now is I have built up a vast database of resources. I'm a kind of an information hoarder. So I have this massive Excel spreadsheet, and as I come across resources, I put them in the spreadsheet, and then I'll load them into the directory. Then what I usually do is I contact the person that runs whatever resource it is, mention that that they're in the directory, and it gives them an opportunity to update them in whichever way they want. It's strictly free. A basic listing is all free. What I will be doing eventually is allowing people to essentially, if they come across the site and they're not in it, they will be basically allowed to kind of connect onto the site, load a preliminary listing. It would be reviewed by me, and then it would go public. So, and I get a lot of people contacting me through Facebook, social media, Twitter. I see a lot of people at the track because I go to a fair amount of races, and they often ask, like, how do I get involved? How do I get in there? And I'm, if they're not already in there, I just basically take their information and add them in.
Fantastic. And what other kind of content you've got there? Obviously, you've got list of providers and suppliers.
I have teams. So teams basically covering, and it's global. So we have teams from all over the world in both sports car, primarily open wheel. Like I said, I want to expand into motorcycles and a couple other things, but sports cars and open wheel for sure. We have series, so a global directory of series. So, and what we're trying to do is essentially give people, because the idea is if you're looking, you're not sure. Let's say you're a young driver, you're a karter you want to go into cars. You might want to get an idea of what kind of series are out there for, and what would make sense for you. You want to know what the competitiveness of that series might be. And then the next step, obviously, is you want to get an idea of what teams are involved. So we're allowing you to do this kind of graduated research in order to better prepare yourself for actually approaching some of these teams to discuss the next step. And then on the service end, we have everything from young scholarship programs, arrive and drive programs, national sanctioning bodies. They have all kinds of different programs to support young drivers. We have all the information on that. So it's not just things like driver coaches and physical conditioners. It is everything from, and a lot of those resources people don't realize. They don't even know it's out there. And we're, sports car programs, teams that have driver development programs, all that kind of stuff. That's what we're really about, and trying to push a lot of that stuff.
And so, Mark, as a fan, how do you know about all of this information? How's that content getting to you? Are you stalking people on LinkedIn or?
Well, a little bit of that, I guess. I basically spend a lot of my time, it's like somebody who loves the stock market and is constantly reading and stays in touch with multiple sources. I do that with racing. I literally have a system where I'm constantly checking what's going on. the nice thing that as the site has become more popular, people are coming to me and they're saying, oh, by the way, we're running a young driver development program in Homestead in February. We'd love you to mention it on your site. And so I'll do that. So it's a bit of me going out and reading the news and people approaching me and saying, this would be a perfect thing for you to publicize, because we want to encourage drivers to get involved. And that's not just at the young driver level. It's also at the, what I guess you'd call the gentleman driver level, where a lot of them are approaching me as well, because you would think that a young driver would need resources because they're not quite sure maybe where to go, or the parents, and it's a lot of money. So they want to make sure that they're spending their money wisely. But you'd think, well, a gentleman driver, they have the money, they're older, they shouldn't have really too many issues. And yet what I found out was that a lot of them are not quite sure what is the best approach and where they should put in their money. Because as you know, everybody wants everybody's money, especially in these days. So they want to be very sure of what they're doing and where they're going. So this allows them to research it and make an informed decision before they kind of write that big check.
Fantastic. So you also have blogs and you interview a lot of people. Why did you decide to go down the blog aspect? Obviously, when we can do videos and stuff these days, it's just a matter of time, and because it is your part-time gig, or is there something about blog writing that you really like doing?
Well, I've always loved to write. I used to be involved in the music industry, and I wrote quite a lot on that. So I enjoy writing. I find it's easy to coordinate usually with people. But as I've done more and more phone interviews, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that a podcast is probably not a bad idea to go, not a bad route to take. I actually host a monthly radio show here in Montreal, a music show. And I used to do a music podcast. So I'm familiar with it, but I mean, I want to make sure it is a time commitment. It is a commitment. I want to make sure I do it right. I want to make sure I do it properly, but definitely it's something that I am looking into. But for now, the blog seems to work well for what I need. And I try to do a weekly posting. So, so that's right now, that's kind of works well for me. But yeah, probably some kind of a podcast with maybe not so much a video podcast, an audio podcast, but with maybe some video highlights or something.
Yeah, well, of course, you don't have to go against the norm. I was just trying to say, identify for the drivers, they don't always have to do video as well. Like if they have a love or a preference for doing writing, then blogs are completely fine. And as I said, it's helped you grow your business. Well, it's a hobby business, and now that's potentially turning into a business. So interviewing people is just as great, or blog writing, as doing videos or doing podcasts as well. But you have interviewed a lot of people. So what kind of articles or whose interviews would they find over on the Motorsport Prospects?
Well, I've done a lot of different interviews. So I've interviewed numerous physical conditioning coaches, including yourself, actually.
And me, yes.
So right away, that's a great endorsement. I've interviewed a lawyer in the UK that specialized in motorsport. So we did a 2-part series on what drivers should be looking at from a legal point of view, contracts and all that kind of stuff. I've talked to people that actually, business owners that sponsor race car drivers, to get an idea of what it is that they look for when sponsoring a driver, which should help you as a driver understand your responsibilities towards your sponsors. I've talked to mental conditioning coaches about the importance of mental conditioning. I've talked to team owners about what they look at as far as how they evaluate drivers. I've talked to series owners about what their series offer and how that is, according to them, the best series to go and compete in. I have interviewed young scholarship programs, for example. There's both a Team Canada and Team USA program that send young drivers to the Formula Ford Festival in the UK. So I want to get an idea of, what it is that you're looking for when you're evaluating drivers. And the whole idea is it's to give a driver the opportunity to understand what's expected of them and what they can do to help them move up to the next step, move up to the next level. You could be an amateur that just wants to do club racing. You could be a young karter wanting to move into cars. You could be a gentleman driver trying to figure out where it is that you would like to compete. All of them could use a bit of all of them can use information.
Yes, and guidance.
So yeah, so the more information you get, the better it is.
And so you're expanding your services. So what's that going to entail? Is that going to be more directive consultation work, or?
Well, yeah, the first thing I'm going to add is an events calendar, and the events calendar is not going to be a traditional racing calendar. It'll be more things like, for example, when you may have a webinar that you're scheduling, that would be on there. There's a lot of webinars. There's a lot of seminars. There's a lot of things that drivers might find of interest, and it'll all be in one spot, and it'll be global. So that'll be something I think that'll really help people out. The next step will be a consulting service. I was surprised that a lot of people, while the directory is very helpful, they kind of said to me, Mark, I would kind of like it if you could do the research for me. And
Yep.
My background is the law, and I'm quite familiar with research, and I found that a bit puzzling. I thought, well, everything's there; it's all free. But they said, well, time is money, and we would prefer to pay you to do that research and prepare a customized report for my specific needs. So that is kind of the next step that it's evolved into, and that's where it's becoming. It's going from a hobby to slowly becoming a business without me realizing it. So, so that's pretty much, those are the two areas in the short to medium term that I'm looking at expanding into.
But like they say, when you're passionate about what you do, it's not a job, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Sometimes you get carried away.
That's right. And it sounds like you're very passionate about our industry. So thank you very much for going from a fan to providing these fantastic services. So again, guys, if you're looking to get some more information around about the world of motorsports and how you can enhance just your knowledge as well as your experience, what's the website?
The website is www.motorsportprospects.com. If you Google motorsport resources, I think I'm the third site on Google. But yeah, motorsportprospects.com. There's also a fairly active Facebook group page that I run, as well as I'm on Twitter.
Fantastic. And all of those links also will be in today's show notes as well, over at the motivatetraining.com.au/podcast. Before we wrap up today, Mark, you have given us lots of insight into the business, so I thank you very much. Do you have any final words or wisdoms for the drivers out there about, accessing resources that are available to them?
I think the thing is to keep an open mind. Even though you might be set on, let's say, racing in Formula One, keep an open mind. There are a lot of opportunities out there. So just make sure that you don't kind of narrow your focus. That would be one of them. And the other main thing is do the work. Everybody I've talked to, it's always the same thing. It's a tough business. It's not easy to get into. But you need to put in the time and the effort and the research and the work in order to make it. And that's really not unlike anything else that we do in life.
No, and so many times the athletes just want to drive, but unfortunately now, probably back in Jacques Villeneuve's day, they could have just rocked up to the track and drove, but it's definitely changed a lot now where they're having to bring sponsorship towards teams, doing their own social media, being
Absolutely.
brand ambassadors and stuff like that. It's a very different ballgame.
Yep, absolutely. But an exciting one.
Yes, of course. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
Well, Mark, thank you once again for your time today. I really appreciate it. Guys, I recommend you head over to motorsportprospects.com and check out those resources.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problems, Mark. Have a great day.
Bye.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate to Tea. Until next time, take care.